Welcome. I'm Gary Parr, Editorial Director, Efficient Plant Magazine, and this time I have with me Brent Nelson, who is the Director of Product Development for Industrial Services for Donaldson in Bloomington, Minnesota, and they are a global manufacturer of filtration products and solutions. You can find them at donaldson.com, right down there at the bottom of the screen. And our topic today is software and remote monitoring and how that can work and help you in your manufacturing operations. And let's start out just taking a look at the situation, which I'm sure most people are familiar with: shortage of skilled workers, desire for remote monitoring. People want to work from home. People don't want to come in if they don't have to. Uh, that whole situation, and then how can remote monitoring services, that subscription service, how can they play into that and help people?
Thank you for having me on, Gary.
Sure.
Appreciate it. So I guess, yeah, if you want to start with discussion of the worker shortage, obviously we're coming out of a very interesting time in human history with the COVID pandemic. But really, this was something that was predicted long before COVID that we would be at this time several million, depending on which analyst you want to look at, several million workers short of skilled workers in the industrial industry. And it's something that's been projected for several years. COVID and early retirements that led from that, and people just leaving the workforce, certainly expedited that a little bit. Uh, but and so we're feeling maybe the effects a little bit earlier than were expected. But we also project that this is not something that's going to go away anytime soon, that there's
No.
going to be continued, especially as we get more and more people nearing retirement age, and right now less skilled workers to come in and fulfill those roles. The worker shortages are really going to be with us for probably 10 to 20 years, depending on which analysis you look at.
So get
Uh,
used to it.
get used to it, yeah, yeah. I think we all got tired of the term "the new normal"
Yeah.
during COVID, but in reality, in the industrial space, this really is going to be the new normal for a while. Is real shortages of those skilled workers.
All right. And so then you can't find people. It takes time to train people. So we start to look at outside services that can help because business has to continue. Uh, and these several people offer condition monitoring, remote monitoring, and analysis services. What are some of the pros and cons when you look at these services for manufacturers?
Sure. So the pros, first of all, like with any connectivity or Industry 4.0 solution, is you now have the capability to get data and alerts in real time. So really within seconds or maybe minutes when there's an issue with that machine. You're not waiting on somebody to walk by the machine to notice there's something wrong. You're not waiting for smoke to be coming out of it to know that something wrong, or a service technician to come in and know that something's wrong. You've got the technology, the sensors, the software, and the dashboards to know immediately when there's an issue. And then the beauty of it, when you look at it from an IoT space, where you're pushing data actually up to a cloud, not necessarily just on your local control system, but when you're pushing it up to a cloud, the advantage of that is now you have other people that can look at that data and those alarms outside of the four walls of your factory. And those could include the dealers who sold you the equipment. It could be the service technicians who are servicing it for you, or it could even be the equipment manufacturer themselves. All people who have expertise around that piece of equipment that may or may not exist in your plant now can look at that data in real time and collaborate with the maintenance teams and the engineers in the plant, give them a better idea of what the problem is, how to fix it, or if a service is required, that service tech is showing up having a pretty good idea what work is going to need to be done, what are the replacement parts I need, so they're ready to go to have that done right away. That's the big advantage. Where if the disadvantage and where that people get concerned is now you are talking about having data that's leaving the four walls of your plant. And in an age of cybersecurity and major concerns, obviously that's a concern of a lot of companies, and it should be. So what's really important for companies to understand is what is the critical data that we need to keep secure inside these four walls, and what's the data that we are okay sharing with third parties, dealers, service companies, OEMs. Anything that is your proprietary technology, your proprietary processes, whatever your special sauce is. Those are things that you have to keep more controlled internally in the system. But if you look at things about temperature data on machines, flow, things like that, usually that's not data that needs to specifically stay inside that control system. Doesn't mean you're just going to share it out to the world. And these cloud systems, they are secure with encryption and all the security mechanisms built into them. They still are secure. But you as part of this remote monitoring piece, you are typically sharing it with third parties. So you do have to be careful of the data that you are making available outside of your company.
Yeah, well, and that's a thing with anything that goes to the cloud or out into cyberspace is there is a level of security, but that's not a set it and forget it thing. You have to stay.
Yes.
It's a diligence thing, and there's some upfront planning and thinking that goes into that before you
Yep.
implement these services. When you talk about all of the people who could be involved in a situation, a fault, a failure, whatever it might be, some real power there in being able to bring in expertise from the manufacturer of the product to, say, folks from your end to people at the plant, and to be able to collaborate. Seems like there's a lot more power there than just having that sit on the maintenance team as an obligation.
Yeah, definitely. And the more you can do with the data and the alerts, the more people who have expertise who can look at it, the better outcomes you're going to find. When we launched our first service at Donaldson, which was monitoring our dust collection equipment, what we found is there was a lot of benefits for some people, but for some people who really didn't have the expertise of the equipment, just telling them that there's an alert and here's some data doesn't really help, because if you don't know enough to look at the data and understand, here's what I need to go out to the machine to do, and here's how urgent that product is or that problem is, you can spend a lot of time just trying to analyze the data and still not knowing what to do. What we added then is a level on top of that where we have product specialists who are monitoring as well. So when that alarm occurs, not only do the maintenance team see what's going on, but also our product specialists at Donaldson would also see that there's an alert. They can look immediately at the real-time data and historical data of that machine. And most of the time, probably 80% of the time, they have a pretty good idea of what the problem is and what the resolution is, and then we can call or email that customer immediately and say, here's the problem, here's what I think you should do to address it. And it might be something really simple, go turn on compressed air. It might be something that requires bringing in an outside service party or an expert to go in and fix that machine.
And so far as to even be on the phone with someone who's at the unit and say, turn this knob, flip this switch.
Yeah, in fact, we've had times we've had to call the front desk of because our contacts aren't available. So we've had to call the front desk of the company and just say, can you get somebody who can walk out to this machine and do something very simple like turn a knob? We've had to go through those steps because especially, a lot of industrial problems, they might start out small, but the longer that they go unnoticed, the more expensive the fix is going to be, the more damage can be done, and the more cost to the company. So it's time sensitive in a lot of cases that you get to these issues. And some of the issues that we found are not things that would be obvious if you were just looking at the machine. You might think the machine is working properly until you have a more extensive breakdown farther in the future.
Yeah. Well, and that's the other thing that hits me is with a remote service, when people are monitoring the data on an ongoing basis, you get trending and you start to see a problem. Now we start to get predictive and preventive way ahead of the game and say, hey, you might want to take a look at something 2 weeks before it blows up on you.
Yeah. It helps. It helps in a lot of ways because you can see what was leading up. And we had a recent example where, and I mentioned this before, where an operator had forgot to turn on compressed air to our unit, which means our filters were not getting cleaned, and those filters will plug and eventually have to be replaced. Well, if you hadn't caught that and you didn't have the historical data, and then the next week somebody does turn on compressed air, but your filters are still plugged, they're ruined and they need to be replaced. And now the finger pointing starts. How come these were supposed to last me a year? How come they only lasted 3 months? And now everybody starts pointing fingers at each other. And now you've got the data at least to show clearly, okay, here's the problem. Here's where it happened. Your operator forgot to turn on compressed air. So
Yeah,
it helps quickly diagnose the issue.
and that's an outside source
Yeah.
identifying the problem, so that eliminates a lot of internal strife. Yeah, particularly for small and mid-sized people, when you say an outside service, a subscription service, monitoring, immediately it's dollar signs. Compare this to having to hire a person or train people. Are there advantages one way or the other?
Yeah, and I think that's a lot of the initial reaction to something like this is I'm too small of a company to invest in something like this. But we find in the industry it's actually the opposite. The really big sophisticated companies, they have all the systems integrators and engineers and programmers they need to build this whole type of solution internally, and they actually have less of a need for this type of subscription software, where it's really the small and mid-sized companies who don't have those resources to build all this capability internally that really benefit from this type of subscription service, because you're not investing in resources, you're not investing in a lot of capital. It's a very low upfront investment for a few sensors and a gateway, and you connect it, and now you're just paying for a simple subscription service on an annual basis or monthly basis, depending on who you're purchasing it for. But that's where really the benefit is, because it's those small and medium companies that don't have the significant capital and resources to kick off a project like that can purchase this subscription and be up and running in a matter of days.
Yeah. Now the product, the service that you folks are offering is iCue.
Yes.
Tell me about what that is, how that works, and how, as a manufacturer, I might take advantage of it.
Sure. So iCue is a service that comes with a cellular gateway that will capture all the data around your filtration equipment. We primarily sell it with dust collectors today, but we are offering on a wide variety of Donaldson filtration equipment, and we also offer it, can be added onto our competitors' products, both new and existing machines. So it's going to capture a lot of data around that machine, how it's operating. It's going to look for any data that's outside of customer configured alarm thresholds, and then it will push that up to a dashboard, a web-based dashboard that end users can access on any connected device at any time, so they can see when there's alarms. They get an email notification when there's an alarm, and then when that occurs, they can go in and see real-time data. And as we talked about, they can see historical data to help them quickly understand what the problem might be, and then what they need to do about it. Now that's kind of the baseline software subscription. But as I mentioned, then there's also different levels of the service where we would actually monitor that software for them, have our product experts monitor it, look at the data, contact the customer to tell them what the issue is. And then there's a level above that where it's essentially an all-in. We'll see what the issue is. We'll determine what it is, and then should there be service required, should we actually have to send a service technician on, we will either send a Donaldson technician, or we can work through a service network to send somebody on site to fix that. So it's very customizable to customers based on A, how much knowledge do you have about the product, about the machines, and B, how well are you staffed to do the work when work is required. So customers can really choose any of the three levels to fit what works best for their company and for their workforce.
And I assume that with a subscription, if I want to upgrade at any time, welcome to do that.
Always willing to upgrade.
Okay, figured that. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the people on your end, highly trained experts in this area, so that we really have somebody we can lean on.
Yeah, and we have frontline experts who have been specially trained and have certain tools to help them debug, and then of course they've got engineers behind them. Should they even need more expertise, they can go to the people who actually design the machine to get questions answered. If 80% of the time it's pretty simple, 20% of the time we might have to ask some more of the engineers, and we can even go to the guy who designed the machine if we have to make sure we understand and get the customer the correct response and the correct information.
go to that guy,
Yeah.
the brains. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So if I want to, I have a dust collection situation, and I want to set this up. I contact you. What's involved? Is it you come out, you identify where to put sensors? Is it wireless, hardwired? How do we do about How do we go about this?
It's usually pretty simple. Usually, it's a quick conversation of your application. What are the things that are most important to sense? Primarily around what are the things that will give us an idea of that machine's about to break down. Is it temperature? Is it flow? Differential pressure? Particulate levels in the air, and we can kind of determine it and customize a sensor package for that customer. And we can send that out. Now we can either come out and do the install. A lot of times, if it's pretty simple, the customers can actually do the install themselves. Powered on. Now, the nice thing is that the gateway that communicates with our cloud is cellular based, which means it's not tying into your local control system. It's not talking to the Wi-Fi network of your plant, because anytime we talk to any of a plant's control systems or IT network, no, now we're creating a potential security vulnerability.
Right.
Now we're in meetings with your IT team for 6 months. So it's a completely independent communication that goes from the box right up to Donaldson's cloud. And the communication itself is secured, is encrypted, but really what's most important is it's not touching your corporate networks. And then from there, you get a login. So you can go to the web dashboard, you have your independent login, and you can immediately start seeing your data. So no software to install or anything like that on at the facility.
Okay, so the IT people can relax then.
I don't know if IT people really ever relax, but
Yeah,
they,
okay.
they can worry about other things. Let's put it that way.
Okay, good point. Good point. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then for the workers at the plant, then we have some kind of an app that goes on the phone, the tablet. Uh,
Yeah, the software is actually, it's a mobile responsive software, so you can open it on any connected device.
okay.
So anything with a web browser, you can open it and it will adjust to whatever screen size it's on, which is good because we know our customers aren't sitting at their desk all day.
Nope.
They're running around the plant, they're climbing ladders, they're on the move. So wherever they go, if they've got their phone with them, they've got access to our iCue software.
Yeah, yeah. If they're sitting at their desk, we got to have some questions asked. Yes.
Yes, yes.
Exactly. All right, Brent. Excellent. So that's iCue, Donaldson.com, right down there at the bottom of the screen. Thank you. Interesting.
Thank you, Gary.